just tuned in to the Stenberg assessment. Stay tuned for your host.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Stenberg assessment. I am your host, Louise, and we are kicking off Season 2, Episode 7. Yay! I am in the studio today all by my lonely. Lamont B, due to his work environment, he is in the culinary field, and he is in contact with a lot of people, random people often, and we both agree that until this virus, just for safety reason, we will hold off doing double recordings for now. But I don't like being in the studio all alone, and I do miss him, so hopefully we'll see him soon. Well, first of all, I hope you had a wonderful Labor Day weekend. We were actually not recording in the studio last weekend, just a busy weekend. It's a big travel weekend, so we were quite busy. But we are back this week, and we're kicking off Season 2, still on Season 2, but Episode 7, so we're getting close to the end. So let me start off this episode talking about something that was on the news about a week ago. Something that I thought was a little disturbing to me, to be quite honest. I would like to start, and every time you see me reading from this, I usually write it down so I don't forget my points, and I'm able to express what it is that I need to say to you. Persuasion, facts, opinions, it's all there. So let me get started. I would like to start this episode speaking about the late Mr. Daniel Prude and the deplorable and inhumane manner in which he was killed. Mr. Prude, untimely death occurred in Rochester, New York, where he resided prior to his murder taking place on March 23rd of 2020, which is this year. From the police body cam, you can clearly see a naked Prude walking towards an officer on the body cam on a dark, rainy night. That should have been when the first alarm bell to every officer on the scene or approaching the scene should have gone off. I mean, right there, that should have been a telltale sign that something was not right. You're arriving on the scene, you encounter a person who is an adult, naked on the street, and that doesn't signal off an alarm bell in your head as a police officer. What about that seemed normal to any officer? Are we lacking common sense? Because anyone with common sense would begin to assume a grown man walking in the streets naked on a dark night, it's raining outside, he has on no clothes. It's clear that this Mr. Prude was not thinking straight. It is clear something mental is going on. Distraught and perhaps on some type of substance, illegal substance, you would think that the officer on the scene, the officers I should say, on the scene, would have some type of training to deal with situations such as these. It was warranted that the officers needed to restrain Mr. Prude so he could not cause harm to himself or to other officers on the scene. It was warranted that the officers would want to secure their immediate surroundings by making sure there was no other threat or danger around while waiting for emergency medical personnel to arrive. What was not warranted were the events that followed. After the officer had handcuffed Mr. Prude's hands behind his back as he stayed seated on the ground, the officers began circling around Mr. Prude like a bunch of hunters that just captured their prey and seemed confused by what to do next. Allegedly, it is said that Mr. Mr. Prude was spitting at the officers while handcuffed on the ground as the officers circled around him. Just how close in proximity were these officers to Mr. Prude that they would need to go to the vehicle and get a spit bag, a plastic spit bag, because I've never seen, what are we being eco-friendly, and it's a biodegradable spit bag, because most spit bags are meant to keep bodily fluids that you are either ejecting out of your mouth or your nose or vomit. So how, yeah, it must have been a paper spit bag, a little lunch brown bag. Maybe the officers, they were defunded, their police department got defunded, and they didn't have enough funding from the government to buy regular spit bag, because most spit bags, as you know, they are plastic, because we want to hold that bodily fluid in that bag. That is the reason why we're giving it to somebody, to spit in, to vomit in. So I heard a lot of stories that allegedly the bag was made of this material. Who the hell cares what material that fucking bag was made of? You put a fucking bag over a person's head. I don't care if it was Louis Vuitton made spit bag. You can't put spit bags over people's heads. They're meant to be placed over the mouth. And it makes you wonder who's the nutcase there, huh? The police officer or the victim on the floor? Who seems more nutty? I would say the police officer seems a little bit more nutty if you're going to go put a bag over someone's head. So, sorry for my language. So let me get back and stay on track. But so that's what happened to Mr. Prude. The use of the spit bag is just basically, as I said, to secure fluids protruding out of someone's mouth. Because here you have a guy walking down the street. He's naked. He's a grown man and he's naked. We don't see people walking down the street in their birthday suits. And it's raining outside. He's spitting at you because he's probably pissed off, because he's probably lethargic, he's probably on some type of drug, he's not himself, and you have given him a spit bag over his head, handcuffed. So he has no defense, whether he can't breathe, whether he's choking, whether he has nothing. So were these officers and that police department not trained on basic CPR and BLS? Basic life support? Because it seems like Mr. Prude did not get any of those. What kind of training? Somebody needs to show the union that video, since they want to stand there and talk nonsense. That's going to be another episode, next episode. I'm going to talk about the union and how they're really destroying our society. I am going to focus on the union, our next episode. And I'm also going to focus on institutes within government-run institutions within state that are also stunning our growth, that are also keeping us from change. So that's going to be the next episode. I'm probably going to piss off a lot of people, but hey, that's me. The truth hurts. So let's get back on the next footage, because clearly there are minutes missing from this police video body cam. There are serious minutes missing. If I was the family, I would want those minutes. They will give me those minutes. I will make them vomit it out into the spit bag that I give them. Yeah, they will be vomited in and out. The police department owes the family that much. That just shows the corrupt, the diabolic manner in which these officers are behaving. You're going to delete some of the footage to cover your ass. This shit only happens in the South, because in the North, we don't, no. It just doesn't here. It just won't fly with anybody. I don't care if you're a police officer, I don't care if you're a civilian, it just wouldn't fly over here. It wouldn't fly with me, I'm sorry. You would produce it. If you have to vomit that shit out, you will vomit it out in front of me because I want that extra missing footage. It would happen. I would make it happen. It's just crazy. It's frustration. It's anger to know that people can behave this way to another human being. There has to be change. It's unacceptable. It's just unacceptable. So let me continue. On the next footage, because it's clear, there are minutes missing from the original footage. But on the next footage, you see law enforcement officers sitting on the back of a naked, distraught Mr. Prude, who is now laying on his stomach with the handcuffed, with his hands cuffed, cuffed behind his back, and you see an officer sitting on top of him with the vomit bag still over Mr. Prude's head. So from the sitting position, we don't know how long that bag was over his head. What did they do to him? Because there's minutes of that footage missing. And then you see a Mr. Prude with a police officer on his back. But at that point, the officer is shaking his arm. He's dead. I mean, it was, maybe he had a few breath left in him, but he looked like he had been down there for a while. He looked quite dead. I would be very surprised to find out the time of death, because I am sure he died way before he got to that hospital, way before they classified him as brain dead and stuck him on a machine, a life support machine. I think that was another cover-up, because he's already dead. He's DOA, dead upon arrival. So you got to stick him on a life support to make it look like, oh, he didn't die on the scene, but he died in the hospital. Who the fuck cares? The police officer killed him. Who, all three, all five, whoever they were, they're murderers. They killed him on the scene. That is where the crime happened. And you take him to the hospital, you put him on life support to torture his family some more for 7 days, because that's how long he was on there before he was declared clinically dead. Then the medical examiner ruled his death, the cause of death was asphyxiation. Asphyxiation, in dummy terms, that means suffocation, by the way. Sorry, pick up the dictionary. So that means suffocation. Mr. Prude could not fight or defend himself because he was handcuffed from behind. Mr. Prude had other factors against him. He had a plastic bag over his head on a warm, humid day where it was raining because it's summer. He had other officers surrounding him like a wild animal about to feast on its prey, which those officers did. So he was helpless. He was helpless against people who took an oath to serve and protect. And you can't say, I hear people saying it's, I still think we have domestic homegrown terrorists. I still don't think it's normal for a police officer to behave this way. But these are not only white police officers that are behaving this way. There are black officers that are in the mix of all this chaos. I mean, what? You're killing your own people? Are you fucking insane? What? Yeah. So when black people sit there and say white police officers are only killing them, no, it's your own kind too. Yeah, you got some black ones in that mix. You've got some, I don't know, maybe they all went to serial killer camp and they all are on a raid. I just don't know what they're thinking. Maybe they all went to camp, serial killer camp. I don't know. But it's not only white police officers that are doing this. Yeah, no, you got the blacks there, you got the Asian, you got the whites. You just got a mixture of who the fuck knows? Who the fuck knows? with these nutcases in police uniform. You just maybe, like my British friend would say, there's too many out and not enough in. This is what happens when you release cray-crays from institutions and you don't keep an eye on what's going on. I have no idea, but this shit is not normal. This is not normal. This is stuff police officers don't do. And nothing about this whole thing with Mr. Prude is even normal. The guy clearly had some issue going on, and so did the rest of the police officers that arrived on the scene. He was helpless, he was defenseless, and it's just what we do. We put people in a position where it's fight or flight. You're gonna get somebody in a handcuff, and then you're gonna kill them after you get them in the handcuff. Well, I think that person's gonna resist arrest. And at some point, it's gonna come down to fight or flight. And we're heading down that road. Because, again, like I said the last episode, you can only push for so long. And then there's no more, that force starts to push back and push back. And when that happens, I can't even imagine. I really can't. I don't even want to imagine. I can't even imagine now what's going on. It's just one force pushing another race to the wall. But when that race starts to push back, I'm going to go and build a bunker somewhere under my house because all hell is going to break loose. And everybody says, oh, well, talk about peace. How do you talk about peace? How does one person, one group of society that is doing the most damage tell another group of society who are the victims to boost and talk and lift the spirits up about peace and love? Would you be doing the same thing if one group of society was attacking another group of society and you happen to be the victim? And no, you would be singing another tune. So please don't tell me to preach happy, because we're not in happy times. The more you keep killing black people, we're not going to be in happy times. Okay, back to what I was saying. Okay, my question for those murderers, because they're not law-abiding police officers, they are a group of thugs. When did spitting, mental illness, and substance abuse warrant a death sentence? Those thugs murdered a mentally distraught person because he was spitting towards them. The 7 officers in Mr. Prude's murder were not arrested. Instead, they were given suspension for 5 months following their horrific incident. Internal Affairs, not sure whether it's within their department or not, but Internal Affairs found no wrongdoing. I'm either living in La La Land or we all have been drinking that stupid Kool-Aid. Because I don't understand how you could find no wrongdoing. A man ended up dead with a spit bag over his head. I must be living in La La Land and you must be drinking that stupid Kool-Aid. So I guess we can go around putting spit bags over the head of people we think might need our help, but are uncomfortable to express themselves due to mental illness. Spitting is now a capital offense and must warrant an immediate death sentence. I think it's time to hand out pink slips to the police chief, the mayor, the governor of Rochester, New York. Why all 3 people? Because all parties are incompetent of managing and doing their jobs, their duties, lacking the capability of keeping the residents of Rochester, New York safe. And since 2 out of the 3 were elected into office by the residents of Rochester, New York, who they failed to protect, those same residents have the right to demand that they step down from their post. As for the police chief, it is time to step down, effective immediately. Since tax dollars go into your retirement, you should be stripped of that privilege. You are incompetent, unfit to run your police department, and you should not be entitled to a pension at all. What really gets me is when I hear the president weighing in on what I defined as domestic homegrown terrorists. An example of this is the Rennell incident. Michael Rennell, who had shot and killed a right-wing protester, Aaron Danielson, in Portland, was then shot and killed by law enforcement on September 3rd of 2020. But before Mr. Rennell was apprehended and killed by police, President Trump inserted himself once again, comparing what Rennell did to what Rittenhouse had done. That Rennell basically got what he deserved, and that Rittenhouse was simply defending himself, or he would have been seriously injured if he had not shot and killed the two people and injured one. I don't know how he believes that. What kind of a person, a leader, says to the American people that taking the life of another human being is justifiable? Mr. Rittenhouse was of sound mind and body. He was not under any duress of any kind when he decided to unlock his gun safe. Hopefully he kept the semi-automatic rifle in a safe and locked place at his mummy's house. But he was not under any duress of any kind when he decided to get the ammunition and load the rifle before strapping that rifle to his chest. Had enough time between his mummy's house and arriving at the protest to know what he was doing would have serious consequences. How is that self-defense, Mr. President? A law cannot be biased or prejudiced. It cannot be problematic for one and not the other. It must remain impartial and must be given due process for all. Where is the American democracy? Why are ordinary citizens' grievances not being heard or taken into account? Currently, there is no political representation for these protesters. They are just protesting as Black Americans continue to be murdered. We've got a constitutional democracy without the Constitution. Therefore, we are giving our government despotism, something the framers did not want us to do, but is happening. A melting pot of anarchists whose motives are to create tyranny within our government system, to put fear into the hearts and minds of ordinary Americans that will produce a society that is violent and unrest. And where human life exists, so will death. What happened to Mr. Rennell was an injustice. Even though he committed a criminal act of horrific violence, he still deserves to get his day in court. Instead, he was deprived of his constitutional rights. What happened to Mr. Prude was reprehensible and unconstitutional. Not only was he robbed of his life, he was robbed of his liberty and pursuit of happiness. His government failed him. His elected state officials failed him in Rochester, New York. Here is my assessment. We are now weeks away from casting our votes for someone to tell us how we should live our life for the next 4 years, how we as a society should function. Isn't life great? We will either have 4 more years of unrest or 4 years of starting to rebuild what little dignity and morale we have left. We have 2 choices. Basically, a new positive evolution towards racism and inequality, or we could continue down that rabbit hole of deplorable and or reprehensible manner that is rapidly bringing our democracy to its knees. This totalitarian regime, where government seeks to target and eliminate organized social gatherings, groups, and institutions that challenge their authority, challenge their political self-interest, those that see no need for change must be stripped of their abusive power. I don't know about you, but I could use peace and love over war. Whatever you should decide with that stroke of your pen on election day, you will not only be deciding for yourself, but for those who no longer have a voice. You will be honoring military heroes who fought a good fight for our freedom, our democracy, our right to vote, right to assemble and protest, right of due process. It is crucial at this time that we begin to limit how much power and control our government have over our life. It is time we take back Washington, because Washington belongs to the people of the United States. It is not a private entity. It is a public domain that belongs to every creed, gender, religion, and origin. The current state of our democracy is not what our founding fathers envisioned for current and future generation, but our corrupt, chemically imbalanced elected officials in Washington and within local state-run government branches have decided to call their double standards, their incompetency, their lack of leadership, and diabolical twisted behaviors of misrepresentation as the new normal of our democracy. It is time we release the so-called agent that are pursuing in their own self-interest of their duties. We no longer need their dysfunctional principal-agent relationship. It's toxic, slowly suffocating the life out of us. It is time we show our oppressors that their new normal is not going to become our new normal. So on this note, we're going to end this episode. But next week, we are going to talk about our principal agents. You've got your local unions, you've got your Human Rights Commission office within states. We're going to talk about these different principal agents relationship that we have somehow or the other jumped into bed with these people. We will discuss how they came to be, their current and prior motives, and why are they still around? Do they create change, or do they hinder our growth as a society? Thanks for joining me. That is it for Season 2, Episode 7. I will definitely see you next week. If you missed an episode and you would like to tune into the Lou Stenberg assessment, you can find us on YouTube, Buzzsprout, Apple iTunes, iHeartRadio, and Facebook. So we will see you next week. Take care and be well.